Hello and welcome to episode 160 of the Clean Energy Show. I'm Brian Stockton.
And I'm James Whittingham. This week, the city of Vancouver is putting out some serious power tasks for film and TV production. They hope to eliminate much of the diesel used in generators and some of the cocaine consumed by Teamsters on set.
New data suggests electric school buses may actually improve school attendance. Said school children everywhere, I knew there was a downside to clean energy.
Some countries are paying employees to bike to work. Get cut off by a truck? Talk to HR.
Volkswagen has eliminated some promised features from the ID.4 electric vehicle. Not to be outdone, Toyota has gone one step further and announced that all EV features will be withheld, including the car itself.
And also on the show this week, standards for green hydrogen, e-fuels, and we find out what vehicles qualify and which ones don't for the U.S. EV tax credits. All that and more in this week's edition of The Clean Energy Show.
So, big radon update here at my house. This is something we've talked about going back to the beginning of the show, I think, when I first got my radon meter, which is this thing here. Radon is a gas that you can't smell. It is in some houses, and it's basically kind of radioactive decay or something. It's radioactive gas, and it's kind of bad where we live. This is a place where we do uranium mining not too far from us. So for whatever reason, there's stuff that decomposes in the soil and is radioactive. And so you got to be careful and watch for radon gas because it can cause things like lung cancer if your levels are high, and it goes on for a long time. So finally, I got the radon exhaust pipe put in my house. What I originally did was put in an HRV, a heat recovery ventilator, to improve the air circulation. And that seemed to help kind of in the first winter, but not so much in the second winter. The numbers started creeping up. So finally now I've got a radon exhaust pipe. They drill a hole in the basement floor in the concrete, and then the pipe goes up and it goes out the front of my house. And there's a fan in the middle of the pipe, and the fan blows 24 hours a day, and it sucks air from below the house and exhausts it to the outside. And this is supposed to fix your radon levels.
Can you hear the fan at all?
Well, yes, I'm getting to that. It's the only downside. And then the other thing they did was put like caulking in all the cracks in the floor. There's quite a few cracks in the basement floor. And here in my bomb shelter in the floor here, there's a drain. My studio where I record is a fallout shelter that was built here in 1962 as part of the basement of the house. And they put in a water tap and they put in a drain in the floor. So they just kind of sealed up the drain with extra kind of spray foam and caulking and stuff because I don't need a drain in here.
Okay. I may become incontinent. You may become incontinent if we start recording there, but okay.
That's true. But for now, I don't need a drain in the floor. So they sort of sealed that up. And then they put a cover over the sump hole. We have a sump pump. And it's the kind of thing where if you get water in the sump hole, there's a pump that pumps it out. So that's now been replaced with a ground level one. So the sump hole is now sealed, and it's got a little pipe that just goes to the drain. So that's all sealed up. But yeah, the main thing is this big pipe that's in the main room in the basement, which is my home theater, or rumpus room, as we used to call it back in the old days.
I haven't heard that term in ages.
Yeah. I'm not sure if that's a Canadian thing or not.
You old timer, right on your Chesterfield. You sit in your Chesterfield in your rumpus room. I heard the word Chesterfield the other day for the first time in decades, too.
And for our non-Canadian listeners, that's a couch or a sofa.
Or, for anyone under our age.
Yeah, but that's a Canadian term. Rumpus room might be a Canadian term. I'm not sure.
If you're born after the moon landing, you probably don't know what a Chesterfield is, if you're Canadian or not. So
yeah, it's one of those Canadian terms that has kind of faded away. So yeah, it's just kind of loud is the only problem is this fan. I can hear it, so I'm watching a movie down in the home theater there. I can hear it. So what you have to do is you got to enclose it. So it's right in the corner. So I just have to get like sort of either two boards or two pieces of drywall or something and enclose it. And you can put some like foam insulation in there or something for sound deadening. But it also needs to be accessible because you need to be able to, if the fan gets broken or something, you need to be able to replace the fan. And there's a thing on it called a manometer. And I meant to look that up before the show. So I'm just going to Google manometer right now.
If you're new to the show, this is Brian Googling a manometer.
Okay, it's an instrument used to measure and indicate pressure. So something to do with the air pressure under the house or something. It's relieving the air pressure under the house. And it's a weird thing. It sort of looks like a thermometer. It's got two sides to it, and it's got red liquid in it. And the liquid is sort of higher on one side and lower on the other side. And you're just supposed to keep an eye on it. And if it deviates wildly from where it is now, I'm supposed to call the radon guys. But yeah, so it's a big project now to get an enclosure for this pipe that also has like a port in it or a door or something that you can open up and kind of check on it. So I'm not sure. I don't know. It's a big project. I'm not sure. I don't really want to do it myself, but I'm not sure who to call to have it done. But, that's the next thing for me. So the numbers are astounding. So what you want really to be under 200 on the meter, or ideally below 100. 100 is kind of the international standard of, whatever it is, parts per million of, radioactive gas. But my numbers were up around 800. And now yes.
What were they before? Go back before you did the first mitigation. What were they?
It was like around 200, 300. And that's when I put in the HRV.
And then it was a little bit better, and then it got worse.
And then it creeped up. It was good for the first winter, and then the second winter it creeped up, and it's been, around 800. And now I'm pleased to report the numbers are below 20. It's just It totally works.
Holy crap.
Yeah.
Well, that's, I guess that was the way to go in the first place.
It's worse in different places, and it just happens to be bad here on the Canadian prairies. And in our city, it's clay soil, which is always undulating and moving around, which causes everybody's basements to crack, which makes it all worse. So, if you're curious, you can always buy a meter. It was a couple of $100 for the meter, or do some Googling and see if it's a bad problem in your area. I think after smoking, it's, I believe, the second biggest cause of lung cancer.
Sure, it is. And it varies by region where you live.
Mm.
There's probably some little town 20 miles away from another town that one has it bad and one doesn't. It's a geological thing of where you're situated over radioactive material. So
they said it's about the same as a 60-watt bulb. It takes about 60 watts to run this thing.
That's more than I thought. I thought they would put in like a computer fan or something and just have a very slow draw. But I guess it's going to create a certain amount of suction.
Speaking of which, there's new energy-efficient bulbs that have come out from Phillips. We talked about this. They had a thing called the Dubai bulb, which we talked about. And LED light bulbs, of course, are much more efficient than regular incandescents or even compact fluorescents. And Phillips had a special bulb that they were selling only in Dubai. So this one seems to be similar to that. And these things are out now. It's called the Phillips LED Ultra Efficient Bulb. And there's just a few available right now.
Where?
I just Googled it and found them on Amazon. But they should be available other places. There's
Home
a 60
Depot's
watt.
pretty good about carrying stuff like this.
Yeah, there's a 60-watt equivalent and a couple of different 100-watt equivalents. Some of them are daylight balanced, daylight color.
Ooh.
And then one of them is soft white. So I always recommend the soft white bulbs. Never get daylight balanced light bulbs. I think they look terrible.
They look terrible. They cause stress. Blue light causes stress. That's why your phone turns orange at night, people. You don't want that blue light. I mean, blue light is daylight, and that'll wake you up. But generally on the inside, you want a nice, relaxing. I got smart bulbs up the yang here in my house, and I have all these different scenes with just basically candlelight equivalent. You know, the mood has to be set for James to relax. Takes a great deal of technology for me to relax, Brian.
Yeah.
And that's one of them.
But yeah, you want the warmer colored ones. But anyway, so that the 60-watt equivalent one only uses 4 watts, which like a typical LED bulb is around 8 watts, 8.5.
Wow, so it's half as much then. Okay.
So and when LED bulbs first came out, they were more like 9 or 10 watts. So they keep making these improvements. So they're now down to 4 watts for a 60-watt equivalent, and then 7.7 watts for the 100-watt equivalent. And they're not frosted bulbs. They're the kind where you can see the filaments in them. So again, that's not for everybody, and it's not for every purpose. But I just love that they're making these kinds of improvements in energy efficiency for bulbs. The 4 watts instead of 60, that's massive.
Did you mention a price at all?
They are more expensive, unfortunately. It's looking like $34 for $34 Canadian for the two 60-watt ones. And then, they're more expensive than the
But they're
regular
brand
LEDs.
new. I mean, they're going to be really useful for some people, though.
Yeah. Just the last thing quickly, we're having another blizzard right now in the middle of April, and it's awful.
It's just been the worst year ever. It's just awful.
I was getting into my car yesterday, and the wind was insane yesterday. And I'm getting in my car, and I'm just bending down to get into my car, and the wind blows my door closed, and I bang my head on the top of the door getting into the car.
Oh, my God. There's
I got assaulted by the wind.
6 IQ points off that you'll never get back, like
never getting those
just
back.
Gone. I've been really enjoying our new Bolt EV. Really love the car. I would buy 6 of them if I could. I think I just really like them. I'm really happy with it. I would buy one for my kids for sure. If I were one of those wealthy people who bought cars for their kids and spoiled them. Maybe I shouldn't do that. But anyway, I'm finding that we must drive a lot less than you because we're not plugging in very often. We plug in every few days. And, it's like 11% a day or something we're using of the battery. So it's not very much in our current situation.
Yeah, I always drive more than I expect, and it's you have to plug it in more in the winter. In the summertime, we tend to only plug it in every few days,
and it is relatively tame for us temperature-wise now.
Even though there's a blizzard, it is warmer than
generally above
winter.
Freezing, but not nearly what it should be. My wife went to the bank to change our car loan date that it came out, and the lady said to her, "Oh, you bought a new car. Is it one of those new EVs?" And my wife said yes. And I just thought, okay, so this is becoming mainstream now. This is, the straight pipes pushed back at me on Twitter when I said it was mainstream. So maybe normalized is the better word.
Yeah.
It's not quite mainstream yet. But I mean, people are expecting now that if you go buy a car, it might be an EV. Did you choose one of those nice EVs that they have now? It's not a weird thing that no one's heard of, especially the person at the bank. And Brian, just before the show, I was listening on Twitter to Markham Hislop, the energy journalist in Western Canada who used to come from where we live. He had an interesting story because we're always complaining about our jurisdiction here, our province in Canada, that is the last to do things. And they're just stubborn idiots who are living outside the bubble of the rest of the world. They're living in a bubble, and the rest of the world is moving forward with clean energy, and they have no clue what's going on. So 8 residents here are suing the provincial government to stop natural gas generation. They're going to sue the provincial government to stop putting their money into natural gas because our utility is run by supposedly an arm's length government utility, a crown corporation, as they're called in Canada, Sask Power. But they're heavily influenced by our conservative government and their love for oil, which we have a lot of oil industry around here. So they even want the Moose Jaw plant that you don't like stopped construction on it. They want us halt construction on that.
Yeah. I mean, around the time we started making this podcast, they announced something like $750 million for this new gas generation plant. And they had to get kind of basically special permission from the federal government to even build it. I'm a little surprised the federal government agreed because, of course, we have rules about these sort of things and that they have to be phased out at a certain date, et cetera, et cetera. So, I was wanting to do something at the time. It never occurred to me to sue, and I don't have time for that. And so instead, I started a podcast.
Yes.
Yeah, the project should never have started. It shouldn't have gone ahead, and it should probably be canceled.
Now, Canada is not a litigious country like the United States. We don't often solve our problems through lawsuits. At least it doesn't seem that way. There's a lot more high-profile stuff that goes on south of the border. However, this is the approach they're taking. It's going to take a long time, of course, because it's the legal system. But they also want the government to have a firm plan outlined in place how they are going to get to net zero by 2035 with the rest of the country and the rest of like the G7 nations. Much of the world is going to net zero electricity generation by 2035. We don't have a specific plan. We have talks about nuclear that hasn't been developed yet, small modular, and things like that. And we have no time. 2035 is basically 10 years away now. So I do have a clip. I wanted to play this because this is something that we've talked about on the show. And whenever somebody reaffirms something that I already think, I'd like to play a clip from it. This is about why clean energy is important for an economy like Saskatchewan's. Like any state or province that has dirty electricity is going to have a hard time getting business.
And I also, I talked to CEOs, startups, people who are looking to locate plants like battery plants. And quite often we get into a conversation with the role of zero emission electricity. And I'm told over and over again that the number one criterion when you're looking to site a plant is access to abundant, reliable, clean electricity. I often say in the podcast that the clean electricity, clean, abundant, reasonably cost electricity is the foundation of the 21st century economy.
And we're not doing that. So if somebody wants to build a battery mine, a mine for minerals that we have here, and they've got a choice between us and our neighbors who have much cleaner grids, getting cleaner every day, they don't want to go to their shareholders and say, we produce this much carbon emissions in this province when we could have done it over there and had less. Plus, when the carbon emissions are less, the costs are less.
Yeah.
So, yeah, it's really important. And our government doesn't get it. It's going to cause us major problems. Laggard governments around the world who are not on top of this right now are going to have some serious problems.
You could be pro-oil all you want, just don't expect to do business with the rest of the world. You're shutting yourself off. And that clip, well, again, from Markham Hislop and from Energi Media. Okay, so we've talked a lot about electric school buses here on the show. This is a no-brainer for electrification. Diesel school buses are terrible polluters, and of course, we send our vulnerable children in them. It's a terrible idea, but there's been a lot of progress switching school buses to electric, and they tend to only have to do short trips, et cetera, and they're parked for a lot of the day. But anyway, somebody has done a study. Diesel exhaust, this is from Electrek, diesel exhaust has been shown to pose a severe danger to the kids riding the buses, drivers, staff, and communities they operate in, with over 40 toxic air contaminants, carcinogens, and other harmful fine particle matter. Several studies have suggested that exposure to the pollutants can be up to 10 times higher inside the bus, especially while constantly idling to pick up students. These buses are always sitting idling, which is one of the things that drives me crazy. People who drive diesel vehicles often leave them idling. So, according to a new study published in Nature Sustainability, analyzing the EPA data shows replacing outdated school buses with electric or a cleaner alternative can result in significantly higher attendance for students. The study estimates that over 350,000 additional days of student attendance were added in the school districts that got this recent EPA funding in the U.S. For electric school buses. So they're already showing that, and it tends to be vulnerable populations, right? If you have asthma or something like that, so it's already working. So the findings from the study are consistent with other data showing cleaner or electric school buses can reduce lung inflammation in riders, as well as lower community-wide hospitalizations due to bronchitis, asthma, and pneumonia in at-risk populations. So they estimate that replacing every school bus built before the year 2000 with an electric or cleaner option can add 1.3 million attendance days in the U.S. And even if that number is too high or exaggerated, or say it's half that, say it's a quarter that, this is actual affecting the health of small kids.
I'm going to review here, okay?
Okay.
Diesel exhaust from school buses is carcinogenic.
Yeah.
Do you want your kids breathing that?
Yeah, I don't think so.
You should not want your kids breathing carcinogenic air. Components of the tailpipe fumes, such as particulate matter and nitrogen oxides, are linked to asthma and other respiratory problems in children. All school buses, Brian, should be electric. There's just and they sit around in the summer when energy demands are high on the grid for air conditioning, so they can feed the grid at peak times and make money doing that. They're not just sitting around, right? Plus, they have time to charge during the day. There's windows of charging opportunity. They generally don't go very far, so it's not an issue. In cold climates like us, we have challenges, though, because sometimes they have to add propane heaters. But there's also more inventive ways of doing it. They just haven't got there yet because this is so new.
Yeah. And eventually batteries will be cheap enough that they can just put in more batteries in the, colder climates.
Yeah, it's a big cabin to heat. But if you do it right, if you do like in-floor heating and radiate everything upward, then it tends to work better, for example. So yeah, this is a big deal. And, we're just at the cusp of this stuff taking off of electric school buses. I think this year and next year, we're going to start to see a lot more orders. Both governments in North America have put aside a lot of money for this. So I don't think they can make these suckers fast enough. And that's going to bring down the price 5-6 years from now. I think we'll see cheaper, and then that's going to really accelerate to the S curve. I don't think anyone should be buying a diesel bus anymore. That's just wrong.
Please don't.
Use the government grants to do that. Okay, our next story is via my son, who I mention a lot on the show, but this time he said, I want to be mentioned. He demanded to be mentioned. He says, I want credit. He implied that he wanted credit for giving me this story. Said, from May 1st, Belgium employees who ride their bicycle or e-bicycle to work will receive 27.27 euros per kilometer from their employer. And it maxes out at about $2,300 a year. Euros. This is from the Brussels Times. All employees who cycle to work will soon be entitled to a bicycle compensation of 0.27 euros per kilometer. What do you call them in euros, though? You can't say cents, can you?
Yeah, are they cents? I have no idea.
This is very naive of us. Somebody's going to have to straighten us out on this.
They're euro cents.
Per kilometer of their commute from 1st of May of this year. So following an agreement between trade unions, which had to agree to this, and employer organizations in the National Labour Council, they had to come to an agreement to do this because the employers are paying for it. It's not a tax deduction. It's actually a further expense for employers to have to pay. So previously they had this before and it was 24 cents. So it's actually gone up. 40 kilometers a day is the maximum applicable, I guess. But my God, you should be paid for that if you're going more than 40 kilometers a day.
Well, and imagine the cost of this versus like expanding your highways, putting in new freeways or something. This has got to be cheaper.
And your damn employee is going to be healthy. And then, it's going to pay for itself in one less sick day per year, right there. Boom, bang. Compensation can still be applied above this, but it will be taxable. So if your employer goes above and beyond this, you will be taxed for it. So 1 in 5 employees of small and medium-sized Belgian enterprises received a bicycle allowance in the first half of 2022. That's a pretty good uptake. 1 in 5 people biking to work. The Netherlands offers a mileage allowance. This is in the Netherlands now. They offer a mileage allowance of 0.19 euros per kilometer, and a spend the government allows them to deduct from their tax bill. So it works a bit differently. Commuter cycling 10 kilometers per day, 5 days a week, could earn about 450 euros a year from the scheme. In France, French commuters can claim up to 0.25 euros per kilometer they cycle to work, up to a yearly cap of only about 200 euros.
And it's money you're not spending on other means of transportation.
Plus, the Italian government offers commuters mobility vouchers towards the purchase of a new bike, which is nice. In Luxembourg, people who cycle to work can deduct 300 euros from their personal income tax to purchase a new bike. In the UK, employees of businesses signed up to the official Cycle to Work scheme can purchase a bike through their employer, which is nice.
I mean, I think I've heard of that before, and just in terms of just something companies have occasionally done. But this is amazing. It's definitely going to help. Okay, quick story here about Volkswagen, and I'm just mentioning this story because, like you said earlier, they're just repeating something that I said on the podcast, so I wanted to bring this up. This is from VW brand chief Thomas Schaefer talking about the recent kerfuffle over e-fuels in the EU ban. We, of course, no more gas cars past 2035, but Germany started talking about e-fuels, synthetic fuels, that kind of thing. But it's pointless, I think, and this is what Thomas Schaefer said. He totally agrees. That's unnecessary noise from my point of view. By 2035, combustion engines are over anyway. And this is a guy who works for Volkswagen. Okay, these are the people that make combustion cars.
Vehicles, yes.
We said by 2033, we're done. By 2030, we plan that 80% of our vehicles sold in Europe are battery electric. So why spend a fortune on an old technology that doesn't really give you any benefit?
Okay, 2035. That is a little over 10 years from now. Do you think they're even going to waste any money developing or improving combustion vehicles? No. I mean, we're very close to the point where that's done, and it's just existing inventory for old timers who won't, make the move. Because by then, also, it's going to be, there's no financial penalty to buying an EV, no sticker shock or anything like that. It's all going to be parity or better.
Yeah. And as we mentioned before, things like fuel economy have increased very, very little over the years. If you look at a chart, it's like a Model T got similar gas mileage to what cars get now. It's just, they're fancier and they go faster and that kind of thing.
All right. The Vancouver film story, electrical access is being granted in several areas of the town to avoid diesel generators. And I bet our listeners don't know that diesel generators are a thing. When you film a film or TV show on location, you need electricity, lots of it.
Yeah.
Less maybe now than you used to because of LED lights and things like that. And the fact that cameras are more sensitive now and you don't need as much light. So you're just diffusing it and just controlling some of the light that exists compared to the old days where they had giant lights brighter than the sun.
Yeah, when they also used to build studios that were just like a skylight in the roof so they could use the sunlight. They needed so much light.
Well, those days are over, but you still need a lot of electricity. You bring in a lot of trucks. You bring in dressing rooms for people that need to be hooked up like large RVs and have electricity for everything in them. You have offices that are portable. When you're not shooting in a studio, you're shooting on the street, and that's a location of but they call it a circus for good reason, because it is a big circus of vehicles, and maybe you've come across them in larger cities. Anyway, when I used to work in the film industry, doing crappy little jobs 30 years ago, right after university, I remember there was a generator. They'd have to park it down the street or a block away and run these big, thick cables to them because they were stinky and noisy, and mostly the noise was a concern. They didn't really care about the health of the people working on the film, but
you have to park them a long way away because they're noisy, and if you're recording sound, that's a problem.
So there's this big, truck, this cube van with a generator, the Jenny truck, who has its own operator who probably smokes, generally speaking, and sits there all day complaining about the world and does very little, but he's the Jenny op on the truck. Anyway, so what they're doing in Vancouver, Canada, one of our major cities up here, and it's on the West Coast, is putting out giant power outlets at about 9 or 10 places throughout the city. They're making a leap towards being the greenest film and television production hub in North America. They're in a province with, as you like to point out, lots and lots of hydro. So very clean grid in BC. They're going to have one of the greenest production hubs in North America, they're hoping, because of this. Yeah, it's a special power utility network. The purpose-designed infrastructure involves installing electrical boxes called clean energy kiosks in areas frequented by productions, allowing crews to hook up their mobile trailers and equipment to the grid. There's probably some places that they've determined through the film office that are popular filming locations, whether they're downtown to look like New York or some other city, which is common, and, probably some rural parks and things like that. They determined the popular places, and they're putting these taps in there. So the diesel generator, which is great for film. I mean, it's yay for us. We could tap in, get the power, don't have to pay some Jenny guy to sit there and smoke by his truck all day. Don't have to breathe the diesel, don't have the noise problem. So that's great for them. And that'll, perhaps encourage production as word gets around. To come to Vancouver. With the use of clean hydroelectric power from the grid, productions can end their practice of using diesel and gas power generators to power their mobile trailers and catering services, and significantly reducing both emissions and noise. So I know you have a lot to say about this stuff.
Yeah. Oh, I absolutely love this story. This is such a smart idea. Vancouver is a huge production hub for film and television. I think they might even shoot more stuff than Los Angeles these days. Which
is sad, I guess, for LA.
It's a little bit sad for the Los Angeles people who have to constantly come up to Canada to shoot stuff. But yeah, Vancouver, tons of production going on there. The picture they used in the story is one of underneath a couple of freeways. And, it's as soon as I saw that picture, I thought, well, that is the perfect place to put one of these power taps, because how many movies and TV shows have you seen where a scene takes place,
drug use and
underneath
murders.
a freeway, punk kids skateboarding or something.
Sure.
It's like a no-brainer. So that's such a great idea. The electrical grid in BC is something like 98% hydroelectricity. So it's an incredibly clean grid, and movie people really care about trying to get the productions greener. It's a thing you start to see sometimes now on the end credits. This is a green production, or we've attempted to minimize
and they
emissions
hire somebody
and so
to do that. That'd be a good job for me.
Yeah.
Get back in the film business by being the green consultant.
But yeah, LED lights have helped a lot. Like, you don't need quite as much power for the lighting anymore. But, back in the old days, like 10K lights, 20K lights, 20,000 watts were not uncommon. I think maybe they still use some of those, but a lot of it has moved to LED
and
lighting.
When they said 20K, they meant 20K.
20,000 watts, and you need to plug that in somewhere.
Throw up a 10K here and a 20K there, and we're good to go.
And I remember telling this story on the show before, but back in 2003 was the big power outage on the east coast of North America. And I was living in Toronto at the time. And one of the things you can do, you can tap in to the grid just in any house, really. Like you can bypass the breaker box if you're an electrician and you know how to do it. And then you get your power directly from the grid. And that way, even in a modest house, you could plug in a 10,000 watt light, which you wouldn't normally be able to do. But we thought we had caused the blackout on the East Coast because we had just done this power tap in this little studio that we were working in. And then suddenly all of the power was out for North America. And we were all a little bit uncomfortable about doing this power tap thing. And
as soon as it happened, the power went out. And it was just an animation production too, wasn't it? It wasn't.
It was stop motion animation, but these were all old movie lights, which would have been 2,000 watts, 5,000 watts, that kind of thing. That was a music video. I did the stop motion for it. That was directed by a guy named Brad Payton, and he went on to direct 3 movies starring Dwayne "The Rock" Johnson. And I went on to working with James Whittingham.
Yeah. So who's the winner, Brian? You are. You're
Exactly.
the winner. Don't you understand?
Exactly.
You have no minerals as your middle nickname, but you are still the winner in that situation, I think.
But also, I think there's a big business opportunity here for battery-based generators. Like you get a Tesla Megapack battery, like one of those big semi-trailer type batteries, or even like a dozen Powerwall-sized batteries, and you could probably do the job of the generator. And you would do it cleanly and quietly. And, you just have to do the math to make sure you have enough juice to run through the day.
You'd absolutely have to have enough because causing a film production to go to a halt is tens of $1,000s an hour usually. Even whatever it is, it's more than they can handle.
Yeah.
Because they scrape by just barely as it is. Even bigger productions can't afford downtime like that. So, yeah.
And no doubt, they've identified, the 8 or 9 places around Vancouver that film crews use all the time. And you just have to be within cable distance, too. You can get those cables to stretch quite long sometimes. So, just a great idea.
Now, the Inflation Reduction Act is sort of, the dust has settled on that. And we now know what EVs are going to qualify immediately for the full $7,500 credit. And which ones don't?
Yeah, so this story comes from Electrek, and they've done the homework of kind of looking through the whole list. And I wanted to mention it because we have lots of listeners in the U.S., and so these rules are basically finalized. Things could still change from this point, but I know people are probably wondering, what EVs qualify for the tax credit in the U.S. So I'm going to try and go through the list quickly here. And some of them get the $7,500, the full credit, and some of them get the half credit, $3,750. So the Cadillac Lyriq qualifies. From Chevy, the Blazer, the Bolt EUV, the Bolt EV, the Chevy Equinox, and the Chevy Silverado. Those all qualify for the full $7,500. From Ford, the F-150 Lightning gets the full $7,500, and there are price caps too, so that's maybe not necessarily all models.
No, the issue here, Brian, is where the batteries are made, isn't it? Isn't that the big issue? What's making them?
Yeah.
If they're made in North America, good. If not, or with one of the North American trading partners. Yeah.
So Joe Biden, he didn't want to spend all this money and just have the money go to other countries. It's a bit of a protectionist move to protect the American economy. But yeah, it has to do with the American madeness of the cars and the battery packs as well. So this is the formula that they've used. So from Ford, so the F-150 Lightning should get the full $7,500 up to a certain price. The Mustang Mach-E gets $3,750, and the E-Transit van gets $3,750. From Genesis, the GV70 no longer qualifies. It gets nothing. And from Nissan, the Leaf does not qualify in any of the trims.
Yeah, and it lost its funding anyway before. They
Yeah,
could have had it
probably.
reinstated if, they are making the Leaf in the States. They're in Tennessee where mine was made.
Yeah.
But I think the Aria is made in Japan still. So,
Yeah.
but then you also have to factor in, where the batteries come from. And they're
Yeah.
making billions of dollars of investments as quick as they can. And that's
Yeah.
what Biden wants.
And Biden wants most of that investment to go to the U.S. if he can. So from Rivian, the two Rivian vehicles, the R1T and the R1S, they do not qualify. From Tesla, the Model 3 standard range gets the 3750, and the Model 3 long range or performance gets the full 7500. The Model Y gets the full 7500 up to a cap, which I believe is $80,000. So maybe not every model. Volkswagen is out. The ID4, none of the trims of the ID4 can get the tax credit. Audi, they're out. The Q5 e-Quattro does not qualify. From BMW, the 330e does not. The X5 does not. The Chrysler Pacifica plug-in hybrid minivan does qualify, even though it's not a full EV. It's a plug-in hybrid. It gets the full 7500.
Really? It must have a good range.
Yeah, this is kind of this is the plug-in hybrid section here. I should have said, the BMW and the Audi, those are both plug-in hybrids. The Ford Escape plug-in hybrid gets 3750 from Jeep. The Cherokee 4xe gets 3750, and the Wrangler gets 3750. Lincoln Aviator Grand Touring gets the 3750, and the Corsair Grand Touring gets the 7500. And Volvo, their plug-in hybrids do not qualify at all.
Now, the Volkswagen ID4 is a fully electric crossover. It is manufactured in the East Coast of the United States. I forget exactly where. But I guess that's not good enough. Something has kiboshed it. Now, some of these people, I understand, Brian, some of these companies are applying for, they haven't filled out the paperwork yet, or they're still trying to verify some of their supply chain in order to qualify. So this could change in the next few weeks a little bit.
Yeah, because it isn't just where the battery cells are made. It can be sometimes where the minerals inside the batteries come from, and these things can be difficult to determine exactly.
So hopefully some of these battery manufacturing plants will get up and running in the next while and take advantage of some of those soon. Okay?
Yeah. And just quickly, also things for home energy stuff, which we have mentioned before. So things like a heat pump water heater you can get a credit for, a heat pump HVAC system, electric cooktops, heat pump clothes dryers, you can get a credit for that. Upgrading your electrical panel, you can get up to $4,000 for that. These are rebates. Those aren't tax credits. Those are actual cash rebates. And then other things that are, this is more of a tax credit. Electrical panels, you can get a tax credit for that. Again, heat pump water heaters, a tax credit for that. I'm not sure, how you get the tax credit versus, because some of these are the same thing. But for people in the U.S. looking to do home energy upgrades, definitely look at the I got this list from Clean Technica. It's got a good list of what's eligible for the home energy upgrades.
So we have a letter here. It says, "Hello, James and Brian. I'm a big fan of the show. I just listened to your latest episode sitting on our terrace in Mesa, Arizona. I've been there."
Yes. Well, our film played at the Sedona Film Festival, right?
Well, yeah, I was just north of there, and I went down and visited Mesa during a day trip in February, where it was a balmy 73 degrees and a lovely day. Beautiful day for me to go to Phoenix area. Okay, so I'm listening to your latest episode of the Terrace in Mesa, Arizona, where we slipped down for a little vacation from Canada. My wife arranged a car rental through Priceline.com. It was actually a really good price, but it was supplier choice, quote unquote, for the vehicle. Now, we were okay with that because we weren't planning on doing a lot of driving, and whatever they were going to give us was going to be okay with us. When we arrived at Hertz in North Scottsdale, they told us they were going to provide us with a Hyundai Elantra, but then switched us to a Tesla Model 3. The rental car agent said Hertz had purchased 10,000 Teslas, and some of their customers are too keen on taking an electric car if they're going to be doing a lot of highway traveling, which I can sort of understand, I guess, especially if you don't have any experience with them. We, on the other hand, were very excited to try out an EV and we've been really enjoying this experience. We've been using the supplied 120-volt level 1 charger at our home there to keep the vehicle topped up and haven't needed to do any fast charging. So I guess they're not doing a lot of driving, probably.
Yeah.
70 kilometers, 40 miles a day you can get off of level 1, maybe, depending on how much you're away. We love the performance of the electric vehicle, and the regenerative braking is interesting once you get used to it. My wife says it feels like she's driving a golf cart. Now, I hear a lot of people say that. It sounds like an insult, but it's just because it's not making any noise. And you sort of hear the whir of the engine going electrically. And he says, keep up the good work. Sincerely, a longtime listener, first-time writer, Jeff. Thank you, Jeff, for writing us. We appreciate everyone who takes the time to write into the show, because I know it's an effort to sort of get yourself to do that. But if you're thinking about it now, cleanenergyshow@gmail.com and other ways to contact us in the show notes. What do you think, Brian?
Yeah. I mean, anybody who has a chance to rent an electric car, I think that's a great idea. In fact, my cousin rented a Polestar 2, and drove here to Saskatchewan from Vancouver recently. So
it'd be winter he was doing that.
Like just a few days ago.
And what was that experience like? Was it a lot of charging? Because it's got a long range.
Yeah, I think generally good. I haven't talked to him in detail about it, but, definitely had to do some planning for the charging network.
Is this his first electric car experience?
Yeah.
Oh, interesting. Should have had a comprehensive interview with him then. I mean, I don't know
exactly.
Sitting on your laurels there, man.
Yeah. I mean, and the charging situation is worse here in Saskatchewan than it is in, say, BC, where he started.
Now, I take it because Jess listens to the show that he's interested in electric cars in some respect and has some knowledge of them, even though he doesn't own one. But this is what we were talking about, this exact experience. You go to rent a car, you get an EV, you find out, hey, this is pretty cool. This is exactly what's happened with Jeff here. And it can happen to a lot of people, which is proof of what we said about Hertz getting 100,000 eventually, Teslas at 100,000. What else are they getting? They're getting a lot of different cars, aren't they?
Yeah, they're trying to go, all electric, yeah.
It's going to be interesting to see how they deal with it, because I've read some stories say that, they want you to have a full charge, and that's a hassle, because then when you're done and you got to get to the airport, you want to drop off the car, you have to charge it. That could be a problem, but they have to work that out so that Hertz takes care of that themselves, or the rental car company, and other people, they don't care. Depends on what city you're in, I guess.
Yeah. Rental cars in general, they've gotten better at you used to always have to fill it up, your gas tank, and they've gotten better at accommodating people who aren't able to do that. Yeah. So a couple different stories here from Hydrogen Insight. So the G7 conference is going on right now. This is for the climate ministers, the energy ministers from each of the G7 countries. This is going on in Sapporo, Japan. And they're trying to develop a global clean hydrogen standard. So, hydrogen is going to be part of the clean energy solution as we move forward. It's good for certain aspects of a clean energy economy, but it's got to be made clean. Hydrogen, you can make it just from water by splitting it into hydrogen and oxygen. The electricity's got to come from clean sources, or it's really not clean. You can make hydrogen from natural gas as well, but we don't want that. So the G7, they're working on a framework that will kind of, set the standards for what green hydrogen is, and hopefully like a worldwide standard, so that we can, move to just using clean hydrogen, which I think obviously is a very smart idea. It's just, the beginning of this kind of thing. But certain applications, and this brings us to the next story, also from Hydrogen Insight, and we've talked about this before. Steel is one of those things that can have a high carbon footprint, and James lives near a steel plant, and he can smell the carbon footprint from his house.
Probably killing me.
Yeah. But you can have things like electric, furnaces to melt the steel or whatever. So German steelmaker Salzgitter is going to start converting its steel production facilities to run on green hydrogen-based technology by the end of 2025, after it received confirmation of a subsidy of $1.1 billion to do that. So the DRI plants will replace coking coal currently used in its blast furnaces to make iron for steel making, and will also introduce that alongside 3 electric arc furnaces. So hydrogen is apparently one of those things that you can use to make steel. You need incredibly high heat. So they already have customers lined up for this. And this relates to, if you want to do business with the rest of the world, you got to go clean. Salzgitter has customers lined up, including home appliance manufacturers, re-rollers, and car makers like BMW. So,
virtually everybody wants a piece of the clean pie, Brian. Everybody does.
Yeah, everybody wants a product they can sell with a lower carbon footprint, and that includes steel.
Time for the lightning round.
The lightning round is a fast-paced look at the latest headlines in climate, clean energy, and transportation.
From government-funded CBC, lithium prices are down more than 65% after a 2-year rally. This is amazing. It sank by more than 65% since January, according to our friends at Benchmark Minerals. I guess it peaked at $85,000 per unit, now down to $30,000. Other metals that are going into batteries, such as cobalt and nickel, are also seeing their prices slide. And what's VW up to?
Yeah, so VW has had to delete some stuff from their ID4 electric vehicles. We've talked about this kind of thing before. It tends to be a supply chain issue. They can't get the chip. They can't get the part. They haven't actually said what the situation is here, but I assume that's the case. They can't get some chips or some parts. So in the Volkswagen ID4, the overhead view camera, the power folding door mirrors with accent lights and memory position on the mirrors will no longer be included in the top-of-the-line package on the ID4, and they're giving customers a $300 credit instead because this is something that was promised in their literature. So, VW having to eliminate some stuff from their cars to get them made.
Greenpeace says it's suing the European Union's executive over its decision to grant some gas and nuclear power stations a fake, quote-unquote, green label under EU sustainable finance rules. They say polluters are already using this fake label to siphon green finance away from where it is needed. Energy think tank Ember says power sector emissions have peaked in 2022 worldwide as wind and solar reached a record 12% of global capacity. An update on California covering canals with solar panels. Study has found that covering the canals in California could reduce evaporation by as much as 90% and save 63 billion gallons of water per year, enough to meet the residential water needs of more than 2 million people just by putting solar panels on the canals.
Yeah, they need water there in California.
And after California greatly diminished its solar tariff program, paying solar roof owners less money for the electricity they feed into the grid, Tesla has come out and said to Californians, buy one of our Powerwall batteries. They say adding a Powerwall allows you to store solar energy and use it later. A solar-only system will reduce the median customer's electricity bill by 57%, but if you add this battery to store the excess power that would normally go into the grid, you could now save 92% off your power bill. And even more during September evening hours. An Angus Reid poll in Canada found that people working from home like it. 75% like working from home at least a little bit, and 50% or quite a bit like it. From the Financial Times, U.S. manufacturing commitments doubled after Biden's subsidies launched. That's doubling U.S. manufacturing from that IRA. Climate legislation. Calgary's new 2,000-plus paneled solar carport could soon be generating enough power to power the entire TELUS Spark Science Center. And solar carports are a rarity in Canada, Brian, so it's kind of unusual. You see them in Arizona a lot.
Yeah.
Financial firm Lazard has its 2023 levelized cost of electricity report out. Utility PV, that is solar at a utility scale level, ranges from $24 to $96 per megawatt hour. Onshore wind starts at $24, offshore $72, geothermal $61, nuclear $141. But this is interesting. Gas with carbon capture is only $39 to $101. So that is cheaper than I was led to believe. So is not really competing with solar.
Yeah, it's still more expensive than solar, but it is, cheaper than I would have expected.
And it's also going to become probably cheaper too, as solar also becomes cheaper. So maybe there is some possibility for that, but it's really not necessary either. Yeah. You're just going to a great deal of trouble to
for something
to burn
that's
a fossil
just going to
fuel.
have to be eventually shut down anyway.
Yeah. In 2022, 79.3% of all new cars sold in Norway were 100% battery-powered vehicles. And now we're at 21% of all vehicles on the road in Norway being battery electric. So it takes some time, but we're making progress there. It's 1 in 5 now.
Yeah, having, high electric vehicle sales is one thing, but replacing the entire fleet of vehicles around the world, that's going to take a lot longer.
And finally this week from Clean Technica, Mark Jacobson and his colleagues at Stanford University have published a new study in the journal Energy and Environmental Science that claims 145 of the world's nations could switch to 100% renewable energy in a few years using renewable energy technologies available today. They recommend the world make the switch over by 2035, but in no event later than 2050, of course. Their goal is to have 80% operating on renewable energy by 2030, which is possible but not happening, Brian, but it is entirely possible. The researchers say switching to renewable energy would avoid grid blackouts and save customers trillions of dollars. One of the main reasons for that finding is that the combustion-based energy systems most countries rely on require a lot of energy just to function. Just to keep up and running, they take a lot of energy. So in switching to a clean, renewable energy system, Jacobson states that the worldwide energy usage would go down by 56%, Amelia. And hang on to your pants here. Switching the world to renewable energy will cost $62 trillion, but the payback would take just 6 years. 6 years. My panels on my roof are taking twice that long. Come on.
Yeah, you buy solar panels. It's a lot up front, but they eventually pay for themselves. And by their calculation, only 6 years to pay this back, which makes it the no-brainer solution.
Man. And then it's cheap after that. You save everybody tons of money and clean air and hospital bills and this and that, and it goes on and on. That's our show for this week. Please, like I say, take the time to contact us. cleanenergyshow@gmail.com. We've got a YouTube channel with our pretty faces on there and some other features. Check out the Clean Energy Store. The link is in your show notes. Make a donation to the show using the PayPal donate button. If you're new to the show, remember to subscribe on your podcast app to get new episodes of this great show delivered every week. We'll see you next time.
See you next week.